The commander gives the order to blow ballast tanks and the submarine surges up to the surface. There's a violent impact that shakes the vessel, throwing its joyriders to the deck and slicing the students' fishing vessel almost clean in half. In 2001, the Ehime Fisheries High School in Ehime Prefecture is planning a 74-day voyage for a student training program. They'll spend 74 days at sea on the Ehime Maru while studying various maritime subjects. The Ehime Maru is a government fishing vessel measuring 58 meters. At the same time in Hawaii, the US Navy is planning a Distinguished Visitor Embarkation Program event. Part of this program is to invite civilians aboard a nuclear submarine to experience the vessel's capabilities. The USS Greenville is chosen for this mission. It measures 110 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 10 meters deep, almost twice the size of the Ehime Maru. On the 10th of January 2001, the Ehime Maru set sail from the Ehime Fisheries High School. The voyage is led by Captain Hisao Onishi, a mariner with 40 years of experience. Aboard the Ehime Maru are 20 crew members, 13 students, and 2 teachers. On the 8th of February, after almost a month at sea, they dock in the Pier 9 port of Honolulu to repair the vessel's air conditioning system. The repair will take 1 day before they continue to fishing grounds around 300 nautical miles south of Oahu. The USS Greenville is also ready to set sail. In charge of the joyride for the Navy's special guests is Commander Scott Waddell. During the submarine's inspection, Commander Waddell is told that the sub's AVSDU, or Analog Video Signal Display Unit, is faulty. The AVSDU is a monitor located in the control room displaying crucial sonar information. Commander Waddell weighs his options and decides that the display unit is not essential for a joyride. At 07:57 on the 9th of February 2001, the USS Greenville departs Pearl Harbor carrying 106 crewmen and 16 guests. The US Navy nuclear-powered attack submarine sails south of Oahu, Hawaii on a distinguished visitor cruise, which is a Navy initiative to take important opinion-making civilians like politicians, journalists, and business leaders for a joyride on a nuclear submarine. The Navy shows them what their subs are capable of, to get the message out that the US Navy has complete mastery over the world's oceans. The Greenville is a state-of-the-art war-ready submarine built with all the latest stealth technology, and it's armed to the teeth. It's built to glide undetected through the ocean. To operate this war machine, a highly trained group of submariners do a difficult job requiring a unique set of skills. Navigation is the most important aspect of everyday sailing, and the crew prides itself on their navigation skills. Without being able to look outside and see where they're going, they rely purely on technology like sonar to navigate. They use that technology to build a picture of the environment around them, including the location of vessels on the surface and underwater. On the way out of the harbor, the submarine is piloted from the bridge in the sail. At 09:30, the crew and guests move inside to the control room, where the guests have their first taste of the high-tech command center. Over the next few hours, they sail south into open water towards a designated visitor cruise area. After arriving in their operations area mid-morning, the crew dive the sub to 90 meters deep. As the time approaches 1100, they rig the sub for deep submergence and take it down to 215 meters. They run checks on the condition of the submarine at that depth and then descend to an undisclosed depth. The US Navy keeps maximum dive depths a secret. They stay at this secret depth for half an hour and then bring the Greenville back up to 200 meters. At 11:43, the watch crew is swapped in the control room. Submarines, like all Navy vessels, are manned in watches. The officer of the deck is in charge of the sub. This person varies from watch to watch, but is always a qualified senior officer. The officer of the deck is responsible for directing all vessel movements unless the commanding officer decides to step in and take over. Lieutenant Michael Cohen, the sub's main propulsion assistant, takes over as the officer of the deck. Having reliable navigation information is the most important thing for the officer in charge of a submarine. To help with navigation, the officer of the deck relies on the sonar and the fire control teams. On the Greenville, the sonar team are in a separate room, forward of the control room on the starboard side. They use the sonar system to pick up contacts near the sub or to monitor their movements. Contacts are vessels on the surface or underwater that need to be monitored. There's a doorway linking the sonar room and the control room. The AVSDU is a video display in the control room that duplicates the contact data from the monitors in the sonar room for the officer of the deck. It's this display that's not working. On the starboard side of the control room, next to the door to the sonar room, is the fire control station. At the fire control station, the fire control technician keeps track of the range, course, and speed of contacts picked up by the sonar team. His data is displayed on monitors at the fire control station. The fire control technician also maintains the contact evaluation plot, which is a large paper chart mounted on the bulkhead forward of the periscope stand. The contact evaluation plot displays the sub's location in relation to contacts on this large paper display. Since the AVSDU isn't working, the contact evaluation plot is the best visual reference for the bridge crew. At 1200, when the Ehime Maru departs from Pier 9 in Honolulu, the Greenville is sailing south at a speed of 10 knots, 200 meters deep. Officer of the watch, Lieutenant Cohen on the Greenville, lets the visitors sit at the controls and he fires slugs of water from the torpedo tubes for their entertainment. Not long after midday, the Greenville is 10 miles south of Oahu in their visitor cruising operation area. Ship traffic is low, making it a safe place to put the sub through its paces. The guests enjoy a light lunch in the war room, which doubles as the officers' dining room. Lunch is split between two sittings because the war room is only big enough to accommodate half the group in one sitting. Shortly before 12:30, the second group finishes their lunch after a slight delay and joins the others in the control room. They listen to sounds of marine life picked up on the sonar equipment and they have a go at steering the sub. After the delay at lunch, the tour is running slightly behind schedule. The officer of the deck, the executive officer, and the submarine's navigator are all in the control room with the operations crew. The commanding officer, Commander Scott Waddell, is in his stateroom with some of the guests. At 12:30, the Greenville turns around and proceeds due north on a course of 0 degrees. The sonar crew starts tracking a contact bearing 331 degrees, just west of north. They pick it up somewhere near Oahu and designate it as contact number S12. 3 crewmen are on duty in the sonar room. The sonar supervisor, Edward McGivney, oversees the operation. 1 technician handles detecting and tracking sonar contacts, while the other keeps the sonar log and assists as needed. The acoustic environment is good and contacts can be heard from a distance of 15 to 20 nautical miles. At 12:32, the sonar crew pick up another new contact bearing 358 degrees, which is almost exactly due north. The crew designate this contact as S13. They assess both contacts to be around 20 miles north outside Oahu. There's only 1 man at the fire control station for this watch. That's Fire Control Technician Patrick Seacrest. He's a 14-year Navy veteran and he's been operating fire control equipment for 12 years. Because of the way sonar works, the submarine needs to make bearing changes to give accurate information about where contacts are. Reliable data comes from taking readings from different locations when the ship moves in different directions. Sonar works primarily by recognizing the distance of an object. It sends out a ping and the time it takes to hear the echo translates into a distance. To fix or plot an actual position, you need to triangulate between 2 distances and the angle of the signal. The higher the number of signals and locations the sonar picks up, the more precise the location of the contact. According to the NTSB report, the submarine cruises from north to south during the first watch. And now the Greenville is heading directly north during the second watch. The only change of course they have is at 12:40 when Lieutenant Cohen orders a baffle clear. A baffle clear is when the sub is turned so the sonar can pick up contacts in an area behind the sub, which is blocked from sonar readings. I assume because of the propellers. This change of movement helps with the readings for all contacts, but only to a limited degree because the sub doesn't move far off its north-south course. After clearing the baffle, the Greenville returns to its northerly course. At 12:45, the ship's executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Gerald Pfeiffer, goes to Commander Waddle's stateroom to tell him they're running late. Commander Waddle, who's a friendly guy, doesn't hurry. He carries on chatting. At 12:57 on the Ehime Maru, Captain Onishi orders the speed to be increased to 12 knots. On the Greenville, the time drifts to 1300, and the officer of the deck, Lieutenant Cohen, realizes the Greenville is going to be late back to its base in Pearl Harbor. Lieutenant Commander Pfeiffer goes back to remind Commander Waddle, and they agree to start their demonstration maneuvers shortly. Pfeiffer returns to the control room and calls in all the guests. At 13:10, Commander Waddle and the visitors assemble in the control room for the planned demonstration maneuvers. One visitor is seasick, so 15 attend. With 18 crew members, there are 33 people in the control room. They're packed in quite close, so it possibly feels a bit claustrophobic. Commander Waddle has 20 years of service in the Navy, and he's been in command of the Greenville for almost 2 years, since March 1999. He has a reputation for being good at his job, never shirks responsibility, and is well liked by the enlisted men. A fellow submariner says he knew his job and got the best out of his men. Several visitors go into the sonar room, and the rest find places to stand in the control room. Waddle goes to the sonar team to get their information on contacts they're tracking. The sonar supervisor tells him about S12 and S13 to the north, but he says they're distant and up by land, more than 5 miles away. An off-duty sonar technician from the previous watch comes into the sonar room to collect his jacket. The sonar supervisor asks him to stay to provide another pair of eyes. Commander Waddle goes back into the control room and looks at the fire control station as well. At 13:14, he tells Lieutenant Cohen to prepare the submarine for maneuvers. He doesn't discuss the contact situation with Lieutenant Cohen. He assumes that Cohen has maintained situational awareness. He doesn't know that Lieutenant Cohen hasn't been varying their direction of travel. They've traveled south and north and only once changed direction to clear the baffle. But they haven't traveled along an east-west axis, which means the contacts they're tracking don't have an accurate fix. He doesn't look more carefully at the fire control station and at the navigation station to see the information on the sub's movements up to that point. Everything appears fine from the quick look at the stations he has checked. He chats some more with the visitors and points out the best place to stand during the maneuvers. 3 of the civilians stand on the periscope platform and the rest stand around the room. About 6 or 8 visitors stand around the fire control station, blocking access to the fire control technician's contact evaluation plot on the large paper chart, so he stops updating it. At 13:15, Commander Waddle orders the speed up to 14 knots. Then he calls out commands to the diving officer and the helmsman. First, they take the sub through steep angle depth changes called angles and dangles. The sub dives down at high speed. Everyone in the control room has to hold on to something. Then Commander Waddle brings the sub back up again. He pushes the vessel hard, calling angle changes at up to 30 degrees at high speed. They dive down to 200 meters deep and ascend to 50 meters below the waterline, changing depth frequently. Commander Waddle drops the speed to 10 knots, then he brings it back up to 15. Meanwhile, he gives the visitors a running commentary. He's showing what the sub can do in battle and how difficult it is to depth charge or catch a submarine that can maneuver like this. While Commander Waddle pushes the Greenville through its paces, the crew of the watch stay focused on their jobs. The fire control technician tries to keep track of the contacts S12 and S13. He's tracking their data and maintaining a fix on them. In the sonar room, the off-duty sonar technician notices an interference pattern on the sonar monitor. He's concerned because it appears to suggest that one of the contacts is closing its distance between them. He tells the sonar supervisor McGibbony, and McGibbony tells him to check what data the fire control technician has on this contact. He goes into the control room, but according to the report, he asks about contact S10, which has already faded out of the 15 to 20 nautical mile range that they're tracking. The fire control technician checks contact S10 and replies that the contact is on an opening course, meaning the distance between them is opening up and the contact is sailing away from them. At 13:25, Commander Waddle orders a course change to 140 degrees, and then the Greenville starts on the next part of the maneuvers, high-speed turns. Again, they push the sub to its limits. They get the sub up to top speed and turn full rudder at angles up to 35 degrees. The guests hold on tight and take in the ride. The sonar crew and the fire control technician continue to try and keep a fix on the two contacts, but it's even harder during the high-speed turns. Their systems are disorientated by the movement. Sonar measures distance and angles. If the angles change frequently, then the fix is scrambled. By 13:30, the high-speed turns are complete. Next is the emergency surfacing maneuver. The watch crew must reassess their contacts. What they need to do is hold the submarine on a course that will allow them to confirm an accurate location for each contact. Standing orders stipulate they should hold the sub on a new course for a minimum of 3 minutes. Commander Waddle orders a speed reduction, a decrease in depth, and a course change to 340 degrees. The submarine changes direction and Commander Waddle holds this course for around 90 seconds. The speed and depth of the submarine continue to change as well, which probably makes things harder for the sonar team and the fire control technician. It's only on a steady course with consistent depth and speed for about 20 seconds. And the new course of 340 degrees isn't a significant change from the previous direct north at 0 degrees. A 90-degree course change to east or west would create a better angle to plot their fix before returning to their primary course of direct north. Before they order the emergency ballast tank blow, they'll do a periscope sweep to check the coast is clear. Commander Waddle orders the speed down to 10 knots, and he tells Lieutenant Cohn to get ready to go to periscope depth. There are standing orders that Cohn should now follow, and it should take him at least 8 minutes to prepare to go to periscope depth. They need time to make sure they've got an accurate reading on their contacts, but Commander Waddle tells them to be ready in 5 minutes. Usually going to periscope depth means changing direction again to get a better fix on contacts. Cohn should also discuss the contact situation with the sonar team and the fire control technician. If there's any doubt on the accuracy of contacts, they can steer the submarine until they're sure. Perhaps Lieutenant Cohn has been counting on these 8 minutes the whole time. In the sonar room, during the high-speed turns, the broadband stack operator notices a high signal-to-noise ratio for contact S13. He's a junior, unqualified submariner. He reports the signal-to-noise increase on contact S13 to the sonar supervisor McGibbony. McGibbony stands up and goes to the control room doorway. The broadband operator assumes McGibbony is discussing contact S13 with the fire control technician and the off-duty technician who's still at the fire control station. But he's talking to them about something else. The sonar supervisor McGibbony is asked about this later and says he doesn't remember being told anything about a signal-to-noise increase for S13. Lieutenant Commander Pfeiffer, who's second in command, goes into the sonar room to check the contact situation before they take the sub to periscope depth. The off-duty technician comes into the sonar room from the fire control station. The technician, broadband stack operator, and Lieutenant Commander Pfeiffer discuss the signal-to-noise ratio increase. Pfeiffer pauses and thinks. When a submarine moves at high speed, this can disturb the signal-to-noise ratio. It's a plausible explanation for what they're reading, or the contact could be closer than they think. Pfeiffer puts the signal-to-noise ratio increase down to disturbances from the high-speed maneuvers, and the off-duty technician accepts his explanation. Now the commanding officer orders a course change to 120 degrees to clear baffles. This is a final chance for the sonar crew and the fire control technician to get a clear fix on their contacts. But as the submarine changes course, it gains a new contact which they label S14. The sonar information is scanty for this contact, and the fire control technician doesn't have much confidence about its location. They only have a minute of readings from one angle. They still think S12 and S13 are distant contacts, and the fire control technician later says he thinks S14 is the closest of all the contacts, but he doesn't have much information about it, so he decides to prioritize S14. At 13:37, about 1.5 minutes after the Greenville changes course to 120 degrees, Waddle orders the sub up to periscope depth at 18 meters. The fire control technician rushes to get a fix on S14. He's trying to keep his display monitors updated for the existing contacts and get a good fix on the new contact. He scrambles to update information under a tightening deadline. New data for S13 comes up on his fire control system monitors. He updates S13's course to closing in with the Greenville and changes the range from 9 miles to 2.3 miles. He should tell the officer of the deck about any contact less than 2.3 miles away. But things are happening quickly in a crowded room. The fire control technician feels rushed, and for very good reason. We know the sonar readings are showing an increase in noise, which has been dismissed. The sub hasn't sailed far enough at various angles to accurately plot a fix. We don't know if the fire control technician is now seeing new data or entering incorrect information in a rush. At 13:38, the Greenville's at periscope depth. Lieutenant Cohen conducts a rapid low-power search with the periscope. He completes 3 rapid revolutions in low-power mode and announces no close contacts. Next, he would normally do a more detailed search with the periscope in high-power mode. But Commander Waddle steps in and takes control of the periscope. Commander Waddle does his own search routine. He does a low-power sweep, then a high-power search. But instead of doing a complete search, Commander Waddle just searches where he thinks the contacts are located. He doesn't ask the fire control technician to confirm the bearings. He thinks he knows where they are, and he searches only those areas. He sees a mountain peak on Oahu, but he can't see the island properly through a white haze. He pans right. He sees a plane take off from the airport, then pans further right as far as he thinks he needs to go and doesn't see anything else. He reports that the coast is clear. Now the commander has a small surprise for his guests. Commander Waddle decides to call an emergency deep dive before they blow the ballast tanks and bring the sub up for an emergency surfacing maneuver. The visitors will be excited by the emergency dive, and it'll give them more momentum during the ascent to the waterline. At 13:40, he orders the deep dive. The fire control technician's been frantically entering data for S13. He's made 3 entries with a current range less than 1.7 miles away. But just as they start their dive, he changes the position to 5 miles away. Commander Waddle puts 1 guest in the helmsman's chair and 1 at the ballast tank valve levers. Everyone finds something to hold on to. Commander Waddle gives the order to pull the ballast valve levers and sound the diving alarm. The submarine ascends rapidly at a steep angle, gaining speed as it goes. Commander Waddle braces himself for the bow to break the surface, ride high out of the water, and plunge back down into the ocean. The sub smashes into something. There's a screech of twisted metal scraping the hull as everyone feels a huge impact. The entire submarine shudders as it shakes from bow to stern. Commander Waddle says, "What the hell was that?" Fear and panic wash over the control center. They're out in the ocean, trapped in a large tin can. They're all crammed in the control room, packed together like kittens about to be drowned in a bathtub. Everyone holds their breath, hoping water won't flood into the control room, wondering if they're about to die. A new, different buzz of excitement takes over in the submarine. Sailors rush to their stations, rapidly searching for leaks in the pressure hull. They don't find any. The vessel settles in the water enough to get the periscope up. Commander Waddle looks into the periscope, then tells everyone they've hit a ship. At almost 60 meters long, the Ehime Maru is a large vessel, but it's not built anything like a US Navy attack sub. The Greenville is vast, and it's built for war. It's about 8 times heavier than the Ehime Maru. The Greenville's rudder slices through the center of the Ehime Maru, where Captain Hisao Onishi is on the bridge. There's a glancing scrape as the Greenville hits, and then a huge crash as its rudder delivers the final blow. The 35 souls on board the Ehime Maru feel the ship shudder as it's sliced in half. Captain Onishi hears the impact, he feels it, and as he turns around, the stern of the ship is lifted up into the air. Then the front half of a huge submarine breaches the surface of the water. Diesel squirts out of the port side vents of the Ehime Maru. Within 5 seconds of impact, the Ehime Maru loses power. Captain Onishi tries to call for help on the VHF radio, but without power, it doesn't work. He sends the radio operator outside to activate the EPIRB, or Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon. The submarine settles alongside the Ehime Maru. Down on the 3rd deck of the Maru, the chief engineer, first engineer, and the first oiler are in the engine control room. Without power, the engine room is pitch black. A mixture of water and fuel floods the room so quickly and with so much force, the oiler is swirled around the engine room like being in a washing machine. The water rushing in pushes him through the engine room, up through a deck hatch, and deposits him onto the 2nd deck. He follows a shaft of light and finds a ladder which he climbs up onto the open deck. He never sees the chief engineer or the first engineer again. On the 2nd deck, 9 students have just finished lunch when the Greenville hits. Some are still in the mess hall eating lunch, and some are in their cabins. They all feel the sub hit, and they feel the ship being pushed up at the stern. The students look out into the passageway and see water gushing up the stairwell from the deck below. Some are able to grab their life jackets, others don't have time. Water quickly fills the passageway. Students, crew, and teachers rush up towards the outer deck, then to their muster station behind the pilot house. The Ehime Maru settles unsteadily in the water, flooding quickly. The submarine's rudder has cut a huge gash through the ship, and there's no hope to save it. Some people are trapped below deck as the ship starts tilting backwards and sinking quickly from the stern. Some jump straight into the water, or they're washed overboard as waves crash over the stern of the ship in rough seas. Some climb the ladder to the top of the pilot house to get as high as possible and away from the water, but the ship's sinking so fast that 2 of the students are washed off the ladder. The ones that make it to the top aren't there for long. Within 5 minutes of impact, the Ehime Maru sinks stern first below the waterline. Students, teachers, and crew are pulled under with the ship, caught in the eddies of swirling, frothy water, but manage to swim to the surface when their life jackets automatically inflate and pull them up. As the ship goes under, air, debris, people, oil, and diesel float to the surface. All that's left is a heavy sheen of oil and diesel on the surface, with confused and frightened people and bits of debris floating around it. The vast Greenville floats silently alongside. The Ehime Maru survivors struggle to climb onto several life rafts that have deployed automatically. The diesel in the water burns their eyes. At 13:48, Commander Waddle on the Greenville sends a distress call to ComSubPAC, which is the Navy's command center for submarines in the Pacific. ComSubPAC personnel dispatch Navy helicopters and patrol boats, then inform the Coast Guard in Honolulu, who dispatch their own search and rescue vessels to the scene. The Greenville maneuvers towards the Ehime Maru survivors to attempt a rescue. But the sea is rough, with 20-knot winds and waves almost 4 meters high crashing over the Greenville's main deck, so the crew can't open the main deck hatches. They have to climb up and out through the sails access trunk. The Greenville is neutrally buoyant after an emergency blow and remains low in the water. This makes the heavy, partially submerged submarine bob in the ocean, creating large waves. It'll take 30 minutes to pump out the remaining water in the ballast tanks, so Commander Waddle decides to keep the submarine at a distance from the life rafts to avoid capsizing them. At 14:27, almost 45 minutes after the collision, a Coast Guard helicopter with 2 pilots, a hoist operator, and a rescue swimmer arrives at the scene. The helicopter takes command of the on-scene response. By 14:31, a Coast Guard rigid hull inflatable boat arrives at the scene. The inflatable boat immediately goes from raft to raft, counting people and checking who's injured. They find the master of the Ehime Maru and bring him on board. Together, they continue to count survivors on the rafts. 9 people are missing. At 14:44, a Coast Guard patrol boat arrives and the helicopter lowers its rescue swimmer to the boat. The patrol boat gathers the life rafts and ties them together. The rescue swimmer climbs into the life rafts to assess the condition of the survivors, treating injuries as he goes. He flushes diesel from the survivors' eyes with bottled water. They move the survivors to the patrol boat and an EMT takes over. The on-scene responders distribute the 26 survivors between the 2 Coast Guard boats and head back to Honolulu, arriving at 16:15, 2.5 hours after the accident. Coast Guard and Navy units, along with 2 Japanese civilian vessels, are on scene for the next 22 days, searching for the 9 missing people. The first attempts to locate the fishing vessel were unsuccessful because of bad weather and an inaccurate report of the accident location. On the 16th of February, a week after the accident, the Navy locate the wreck of the Ehime Maru at a depth of 610 meters. For the next 2 weeks, 2 ROVs search the Ehime Maru's exterior and the seafloor for the 9 missing people. They don't find any bodies, and the search is called off on the 2nd of March. In June 2001, the Navy contracts Dutch company Smits International and the Washington-based Crowley Marine Corps to salvage the wreck of the Ehime Maru, and in July, the salvage operation gets underway. It's the first time such a large ship will be raised from such a great depth. The ship is too large to lift onto a barge, and so they decide to raise the Ehime Maru and transport it below the waterline to shallow water near Oahu. They use a remotely operated underwater vehicle, the Phoenix 3, to perform the underwater work. Assisting them are technical experts from Japan, including one from the company that built the Ehime Maru. They first remove the mast and other items on the ship's deck that can interfere with the lifting operation. On the 5th of October, the Ehime Maru is lifted from the ocean floor by the diving support vessel Rockwater 2. With the Ehime Maru suspended 30 meters below the waterline, Rockwater 2 slowly moves to a location closer to shore. On the 14th of October, the wreck is set down at a depth of 35 meters, less than 1 nautical mile south of Honolulu International Airport. On the 15th of October, the first team of US Navy divers begin to assess the sunken vessel. Working in low to zero visibility, 66 US and 30 Japanese divers from the submarine rescue ship JS Chihaya conduct 526 dives over 29 days to search the wreck. Captain Onishi from the Ehime Maru, relatives of some of the missing crew members, and several Japanese government officials observe the operation from the dive support ships. The divers recover the bodies of 8 of the 9 missing people: 3 crew members, 2 teachers, and 4 students. They can't find the body of the 9th victim, and he's presumed dead. On the 25th of November 2001, relatives of the Ehime Maru's crew members participate in a final ceremony for the ship aboard the JS Chihaya. After the ceremony, the Ehime Maru is lifted 27 meters below a towing barge. The barge sails 12 nautical miles south of Barber's Point and scuttles the Ehime Maru at its final resting place in 1,800 meters of water. The total cost of the salvage operation is almost $60 million. The Ehime Maru sank in 10 minutes. Of the 35 people on board, 9 people died. 3 crew members, 2 instructors, and 4 high school students trapped in the ship's galley near the engine room. 26 others were thrown overboard and rescued. The Greenville suffered minimal damage. ComSubPac ordered an official inquiry into the collision between the Greenville and the Ehime Maru. After reviewing evidence and testimonies, the US Navy determined there was no need for a court-martial proceeding. Commander Waddell got off with an honorable discharge, and other crew members were placed on administrative leave. The decision didn't sit well with the relatives of the deceased. On the 10th of April 2002, the Navy signed an agreement to pay the Japanese government $11.5 million in compensation for the sinking of Ehime Maru, $8.9 million to replace the ship, and the remainder for counseling and financial aid for the survivors and a memorial ceremony for the victims. In November 2002, the US Navy paid $13.9 million compensation to 33 of the 35 families of the victims or injured survivors. In January 2003, the remaining 2 families accepted a $2.6 million settlement and a face-to-face apology from Commander Waddell.